My first symptom, which started in my teens, was digestive issues and coupled with disordered eating. It started to transform, which is very typical of mind body symptoms. When I was first told by that doctor that fear was the fuel, I thought, oh, I don't have a lot of fear, but there's more space where I can say, yeah, I'm not going to let this fear prevent me from doing what I love, prevent me from living that big, beautiful life that I want to live. And over time, it's like I've chipped away at like, okay, I can travel again. I can dance again. I can go hiking and get these things that I had built up so much fear around. And even doing this interview with you, like, oh, I can share my story.
Mind-body symptoms can take so many forms. We're often led down rabbit holes chasing each symptom until we finally realize that neuroplastic symptoms have the same cause and the same cure. Kailey Murphy suffered with chronic fatigue, pain, insomnia, digestive issues, and disordered eating, to name a few. Finally, Kailey discovered this mind-body approach and is now living her big, beautiful life. Welcome, everyone. I'm Rebecca Tolin, a mind-body coach and the creator of the Be Your Own Medicine program. Here we talk about how to heal from chronic symptoms like CFS and long COVID and live our best, most authentic life. Kailey is such a great example of this, and I'm so happy she's joining me from Boulder, Colorado. Welcome, Kailey.
You're Rebecca.
It's so great to see you. I just want to say up front, I've got to watch you and your journey up close and personal, really, over these past couple years. You have now been my trusted assistant and colleague in Be Your Own Medicine for 2 years. But we first met when you joined Be Your Own Medicine as a participant. That was in fall 2022, yes? Okay.
Yeah.
And I know that was a really dark time for you. Can you describe both your state of mind and the symptoms that you were facing?
Yes. That time, which I now feel like I can talk about pretty openly, but it was one of the darkest times of my life. And Be Your Own Medicine, I can say, was a vital part in saving my life and keeping me moving forward and healing. At the time, I had already been navigating mind-body symptoms for many years, almost a decade. But then I got COVID. I didn't even know what long COVID was. And I will say, I found your course within a month after getting COVID. So I feel very fortunate. But I started getting really intense insomnia, which I had on and off, but this was the most intense. And it was that tired, wired feeling where I was like, I am so fatigued and exhausted. I can barely make it through the day. And then I sleep an hour, maybe 2 a night. And this was day after day after day. And then mixed with that were these really intense symptoms of pain and digestive issues, and it was spreading across my body. But at the heart of it was a lot of fear. I was terrified. I did not know what was going on and how to find a way through. And I ended up typing in, because insomnia was the most blaring symptom at that time, which I know you can very much relate to. And it brought me to my knees, and I typed into Google insomnia, mind body, and maybe chronic fatigue, and your name popped up. And I reached out to you, and that moment, it shifted my life.
It's so amazing because I remember you emailing, and like hundreds of people email, because you now answer emails, but I remembered your email so well. And I remember feeling like, I hope she signs up because I really feel like this is going to be a good fit. And yeah, I so know what it's like when you're totally worn down with insomnia, that you don't really know how you're going to function and how you're going to go on. And just to be clear though, you had a history of symptoms before this shorter period of post-COVID symptoms, yes?
Yes. Yeah. My first symptom, which started in my teens, was digestive issues and coupled with disordered eating. And then that turned into, in my early 20s, mysterious throat pain. I even had a procedure done on my throat. And then it moved into my feet. And then I couldn't really sleep much. So it started to transform, which is very typical of mind body symptoms now. I know that. But at the time, I just thought something is wrong with me.
Yeah.
And I even was familiar 2 years prior to your course. I had seen a doctor who had, it was a mind body center in Boulder, Colorado. And he was the first one who told me about this approach. And it was such a relief to hear that I wasn't broken, that there was a way through. And I will say, COVID happened like pretty soon after that. And there was just a lot of fear, a lot of health anxiety, I would say, just in the atmosphere. And I was like, I don't know if he's right. And so I went down different rabbit holes even after that and tried. I tried Gupta, curable, and felt like I was doing what I should be doing, but I still didn't really have the self-compassion piece or the insight into how my emotions were playing into these symptoms.
Got it. So, yeah, you're really fortunate that you did find a physician who actually told you about this mind body approach, because that's pretty rare. But sometimes we have these stepping stones, right? And these breadcrumbs in our healing journey that we just keep following. Before we get more into the deeper healing that you went through, what were some of the things that you were diagnosed with and that perhaps you tried to treat from other doctors?
Yeah. So I will say, as someone who is more focused on alternative approaches, I got more of the alternative diagnoses than the Western medical diagnoses. But for my throat, I was diagnosed with something called muscle tension dysphonia. And they thought too at certain points that I had thyroid issues like Hashimoto's, autoimmune, all the digestive, IBS, SIBO, leaky gut, eating disorder. There's probably more. Tendinitis, I think, was another one. But yeah, I can't remember the full list, but there were a lot of different diagnoses that I had. And I would go to different doctors. Like, if at one point I remember my arms were hurting, so that's when I got the tendinitis. But what I didn't realize, it was a whole nervous system, brain thing going on, where for a while I was just treating it as separate issues and being told that I was supposed to do it that way as well.
Yeah. It's like we have all these separate body parts and none of them are really connected. And it gets so confusing until it all kind of leads back to what really makes sense is the brain and nervous system. And I think also, weren't you diagnosed with mold and Lyme, chronic Lyme as well?
Yeah. And that was thrown into, I remember healers who, I don't even know if they could fully diagnose me, but they would feel into my body and be like, it's definitely Lyme or it must. So even with that, there were just a lot of tests that were done. My family supported me through a lot of this, but thousands of dollars, diets, a lot of supplements. I definitely went more that route than more the psychiatrics, Western medicine, but it was still a rabbit hole.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you're naming all these things, because so many people, as you know, are told Lyme or SIBO and other things like that are the cause of these chronic symptoms. And then with this approach, we really learn that that's not the case and that we can recover. And so I'm curious where you feel you were stuck, because you did learn about mind body medicine. You took Curable, the Gupta program. I know that some people are still kind of fighting themselves or at war with themselves, even if they find this knowledge. So where would you say you were stuck?
Yes. So the first class, you asked us, to take a break from fixing ourselves, what would that be like? You asked us. And I had a light bulb moment that all of these different ways of healing, even the mind body ways of healing that I was doing, had an energy of, I need to fix this. I need to change this. I could barely do somatic tracking before your course because to sit, which for those who don't know, with somatic tracking, you sit with the sensation as it is. We're not changing it. And then over time it can shift, but that's what the practice is. And that was one of the key things for me, was realizing how much I was striving and fighting my experience, but calling it healing. And it was my best healing that I could do at that time. I have so much compassion for my past selves, but I would say that's one of them. I could say a few more if you want, but should I just start with that one?
Yeah, well, let's unpack this one a little bit because it's so big for you and for so many people that even if we have all these practices to regulate our nervous system and all these healing rituals, if we're coming at it from that flight fight place, it's still keeping our nervous system activated. And it's telling our brain there's something really wrong with us that we're trying to fix. So, talk about that pivot for you. Because first, I invited you once you signed up for Be Your Own Medicine. Can you take a break from fixing yourself? But it's one thing to hear it and even have a light bulb. And it's another to actualize that in your daily life. So how did you work with that shift from really like fighting and fearing to accepting and allowing?
Yeah. Well, this is where the second part actually comes in, is self-compassion, which there's a whole module on self-compassion in the course. And I realized how I talk to myself is so important. And there were so many beliefs and stories around being broken, around my body. There's something wrong with me. I'm too sensitive. All of these. And they were not so conscious all the time, but I started to realize, like, oh, when I place my hands on my heart, when I take a breath, that's to me the I'm not fixing, I'm just being with my experience and also allowing it to be imperfect and messy, because there were times I was fighting my experience. But over time, I feel like my foundation my foundation is now one of self-compassion, one of being at home in my body, one of feeling more regulated in my nervous system. And it took watching myself, go in and out of that, of being like, oh, I got hooked again. I'm fighting. There's like those 5 Fs from Howard Schubiner. I'm fighting, I'm fixing, I'm focusing. And then coming back, like that's the moment of real awakening and where the shift can happen and where it did for me.
Absolutely. Right. Moment by moment. And I know you really live this, Kailey, because we've been together in person. And I remember being at the creek in Boulder and you said, oh, I want to do a self-compassion break. I was so amazing, right? Like even with other people, you'll take that time out when you really need it, which is so beautiful. And so was that for you, the self-compassion piece, the part that helped you let go of that fighting and that kind of being in a battle with yourself and your body?
Yeah, I mean, that was part of it. I will say too, I have a deep meditation and spiritual practice. And so connecting to something greater, and it doesn't have to be labeled as something, but for me, that's the essence of love. And self-compassion to me is love. And so it's it's almost like a surrender. I mean, I have a meditation that speaks to this of surrendering to what is, and that it can feel, quite spiritual and hard to put into words. But I loved in your course how you'd weave in these quotes that had these deeper meanings, because I'm a poet and a writer. And there was something about those quotes that they were like medicine for me of, oh, I needed to hear that in a very poetic, gorgeous way. And you read a poem too, and it would speak to a part of my soul that was now starting to awaken again. Because I will say my creativity, I felt had been trampled in a lot of ways, in just having to focus so much on how do I fix myself.
I just love that you brought up the poems and some of the quotes, because I think what those are getting at is this theme that we're starting to address is, instead of just fixing, if we actually start to look at these symptoms as a wake-up call, as messengers, then there's actually a deeper purpose in this whole journey. And we can tap much more into curiosity. Like, what are they telling me? And what do I actually need to hear my body and to tend to my body and to come back into balance?
Yes, I love that I know I'm naming all of your different modules, but to me, final module of the course before the thank you module really encapsulates the deeper journey that we're on, or that I am on. And for me, it moved me from being a victim to, wow, this is teaching me something. I am growing through this. I am becoming more of who I am through this journey than I was before the symptoms, which is crazy to say. But then there's a deeper gratitude of like, wow, this is bringing me closer to my inner home.
Love that. I know you've written some really beautiful poems about that, and a poem that you wrote in one of the cohorts and read to the class about sitting with the pain and just listening with an unhurried heart.
Yes.
Yeah. So beautiful. So let's talk a little more about some of the deeper lessons that you've learned through the course and through Mind Body Healing. Certainly, I know that for you and for me and a lot of people in this work, reconnecting with our bodies and learning to feel both the sensations and the emotions through a lens of safety, and perhaps even through a lens of compassion, is really important and healing. So, what role has that played for you, and does it continue to play?
Yes, it's an ongoing journey. I would say embodiment for me. That's the word that came up. And the somatic meditations were really pivotal for me in this, is because and I'll then kind of lead up to where I am now with 5 rhythms dance and moving more. But what the somatic meditations did is they allowed me, through your guidance, full permission to show up as I was, as I am, even to the point where I would have to lay down for a lot of the meditations and classes. And there was permission to do. I really needed that, of like, okay, I don't have to push. All I'm doing is working with creating that safety within, that wellspring of safety. And then what happens usually for a lot of us, but definitely for me, is the sensations morph into emotions, and emotions are sensations. And then I'm sitting with the tears, and anger was another, and these emotions that I never learned how to be. I've always been very sensitive, but I was also told at times when I was younger to smile when I was crying, or I wanted to be perfect and appear a certain way. But deep inside, I was suffering. And that's how my disordered eating pattern started, is because that was my coping mechanism, my first coping mechanism for these big feelings. And now, through this work, through the course and the other things that I've done as well, I have new tools to say, oh, I don't have to reach for that, or, oh, my body doesn't need to flare that. I can sit and be with what's coming up right now. And then just the second piece I'll say is over time that moved into, once I felt safe enough, moving my body, starting to dance again and actually feel the emotions moving through me and eventually releasing too.
Yeah. We both share this love of five rhythms dance, which is just this serendipity that we each got to do it in our own towns. And I know, like you, there was a time I could not have dreamed of dancing. I could hardly walk outside my house. And so to dance now is just so joyful. But I think the key is that we meet ourselves wherever we are with that acceptance and that love and that curiosity. And interestingly, when we just watch these sensations without fighting them, it tells our subconscious brain that we're safe. There's nothing wrong with our body or with our lives. So, what about standing up to fear? This is another lesson that you've said has been powerful for you. And I'm sure that you continue to work on because fear visits all of us.
Yes, definitely. When I was first told by that doctor that fear was the fuel, I thought, oh, I don't have a lot of fear. And in reality, fear is very much present in my life, but the difference is that I'm now in relationship to it. I mean, sometimes I get hooked, but there's more space where I can say, yeah, I'm not going to let this fear prevent me from doing what I love, prevent me from living that big, beautiful life that I want to live. And I needed the science of mind body healing to know I was okay, to be able to do all the things that I feared, because I had a very long list. And over time, it's like I've chipped away at like, okay, I can travel again. I can dance again. I can go hiking again. These things that I had built up so much fear around. And even doing this interview with you, like, oh, I can share my story. And but those were kind of the fears that have to do with movement and living life. But then there are like the deeper core fears of I'm not enough, I'm too sensitive, and being able to work with those as I'm hiking the mountain or as I'm dancing on the dance floor and being like, yes, this is, I can show up. Even if I'm trembling a little bit, even if there's some fear present, there's that layer of acceptance that I've built in through this work. So that's been, and I'd say too, some of the great exposure work as well, where I was building up to things instead of just plowing through, felt much safer on my nervous system. And also not avoiding, because I had gotten in such a state of like avoiding so many things, even just driving, walking, like there was fear. And I feel like if you've been on this journey, you understand how these things that someone else may be like, why are you afraid to walk? It's like that can be scary when you're dealing with fatigue and insomnia and pain.
Oh, absolutely. And when those activities like walking have triggered flare ups before, post exertional malaise. And for people that are watching that don't know what graded exposure is, that is a main technique we use where we're just taking slow graded steps into stimuli or activities we want to do that have often flared symptoms in the past. And we do it with these safety messages and with the somatic awareness. So I'm curious if you could kind of give us maybe a snapshot or an example, Kailey, of how you've expanded your life through these techniques. So I know you're doing lots of things now, and you've mentioned traveling and dancing. But
Yeah.
someone who, is still really afraid to do more, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I'll start. The one that comes to mind is dancing, because I loved this particular type of dancing that was mentioned, five rhythms. And I stopped doing it for years. So the fear was really built up of I cannot do that. And with graded exposure, I mean, first was the knowledge and practices that built safety within. Like, okay, I feel what I would say with introducing new activities is there's a glimmer of excitement. It's like, even though I'm scared, I have a deeper yes. And when I would contact that deeper yes, then I could start to move forward with it. And first, it looked like your recordings, just listening to the meditation and not having to do anything at all. And then I started with just playing one song in my room and listening to it, and maybe sitting in a chair and kind of moving my hands or my feet a little bit. And then I just built on that of, okay, now I'm going to stand up and see what that feels like. Now I'll do a couple songs. And then eventually, I think my plan was like, oh, I'm going to dance for an hour at home. But instead I was like, you know what? I feel ready. I'm going to try to actually go to, it's this community dance that happens. And now I've been going ever since, and also doing longer dances as well. And so I would say with that, for me, it was just really attuning to my body and affirming like, you're safe. And also giving myself the option, if you need a dance sitting down, you can do that. And really accepting whatever was coming instead of fighting and saying, well, I should be able to dance straight for an hour. Like, no, we're going to build up to that. And if you do, great. If you don't, it's still definitely a win and something to celebrate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really hearing how much you learned to meet yourself where you were with that self-compassion, right? Because self-compassion doesn't beat us over the head if we're different today than we were 5 years ago, or if we're different than someone else. It's just attending to the self with that kindness. So I'm curious, when you were more in your really active recovery phase, so you joined Be Your Own Medicine and you insomnia and chronic pain and couldn't do a whole lot. And then how did you apply the teachings? What was maybe like your practice routine like, or a typical day like during that time?
Yeah, well, during that time, I was barely working at the time, which I've now built back. So I did have space to be able to really do these practices. And for me, the somatic meditations I really took that path strongly. I was doing them multiple times a day, and I still practice meditations and some of your somatic meditations. Each day I like to do some sort of meditative practice, but back then I would say it was a couple times a day, which was just what I needed, especially in the afternoons. That was a really challenging time for me. So it was really nice to lie down and do a somatic practice. And I was trying, because I was working primarily, I mean, the thing I feel like I was most working on was the insomnia at first, even though, these practices help with everything. So I would do somatic meditations at night, but I would also do expressive writing in the middle of the night. Because what I realized is there was such a buildup of fear in the night of not going to sleep. And then I'd just be tossing and turning. So what I realized when I got out of bed and I would just light a candle and I'd write these really loving, first I'd write out the fears, what was going on, and just get it out on the paper. But what I love about expressive writing, which is also part of the course, is that in the second step, you're moving into that compassionate, loving, wise adult self. So I was able at like 2 a.m. on these nights to comfort my younger self and to really be like, it's okay, I'm here for you.
I love that. It's so funny. I was just going to ask you how much expressive writing you did, and you led right into that. You and I are always so in sync. I can say I have joined you on many a nights when I was really dealing with the insomnia, like writing by candlelight, and just when I couldn't sleep, just venting things out on the page. And then finding the more soft tender compassion. And it's amazing how that can soothe our system, just like it would soothe a scared child who's up in the night, right? And who can't sleep. And I'm actually glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to talk about a couple of the other symptoms. Because sometimes, well, with this approach, really how we treat one symptom is how we treat all symptoms, but some of them have their nuances. So a lot of people deal with digestive issues and also disordered eating, or one or the other. So tell us a little bit more about how you started healing the symptoms of bloating and discomfort, and also the disordered eating.
Yeah. So to give a little background with that, I really was, with the eating disorder world, people think there's anorexia, there's bulimia. And if you don't fit into that, where do you, you're fine. But I
Yeah.
realized over time and through working with some professionals that it's disordered eating is much more nuanced. And I was stuck in these cycles of severe restriction and then would have these overeating binge episodes. And part of the restriction was fueled by all the diets that I was put on by professionals telling me, this is how you get better. And then I would try to follow it and I would fail. And I think something's wrong with me. And then I get bloated and have, issues going to the bathroom and all of that. And serious, like I'd get these belching episodes, which thank God I don't get those a lot anymore. But that's just a little background. And with that, there was also so much fear that I had of certain foods, so many different foods. Because not only was I afraid, oh, I'm going to overeat on this, but it's also going to negatively impact my symptoms. I'm going to ruin my health.
Just from eating.
Just from eating things like potatoes. Like I'm talking about nourishing whole foods that I became afraid of, because some of these diets, and if it works for someone, that's great. But for me, it was just such a fear game and control. So with that, it's been such a messy journey, but also so beautiful because I am so recovered from both the disordered eating and the digestive symptoms, and not through supplements, not through diets, but through this work, and also through connecting with pleasure again of, oh, I can enjoy these different foods. I've done a lot of work on mindful eating, which is very much connected to mind body work. So before I eat, I like to say a little prayer that I've come up with. I take some deep breaths, and I would work with too, like if I would get symptoms after eating certain things, that's a really powerful time to soothe, to rewire, to let myself know it's okay. And then over time, like I'm eating dairy now, I'm eating gluten. I found a way of eating that works for me. That's still a lot of whole foods, very nourishing, but I've really let go of that obsession and worked with too the emotions underneath. Like what was fueling the behaviors? So expressive writing has been really big for that. Because sometimes when I was having urges to, whether it's like overeat or having really strong symptoms, I needed to write.
Yeah.
Like sit still was almost too much. Like I needed to write or to move to really with the emotions and the intensity that was present.
Absolutely. Yeah, I find that similarly when our nervous system is in flight or fight, we often have to move, and writing is a form of movement, or move our whole body instead of just kind of holding it all in when our biology is really primed to flee or fight. And I so relate to that sense of deprivation and control through all these diets that well-meaning practitioners put me on too. I didn't eat anything but greens and either fish or chicken for 3 years. They said, don't touch carrots, potatoes, grains. And I was more bloated than I've ever been in my life. It's just because the fear and that cycle of also just feeling, I think, resentment. Like I know for me, I felt a lot of resentment that I was having to eat rabbit food that I didn't want, and I was still feeling crummy. And I think there's a couple things tied in with this. One is reclaiming our pleasure and what we actually enjoy. And the other is reclaiming our agency and saying, look, I actually know what's best for my body, right? I can feel what it wants and I can kind of nurture it back into balance. Yeah.
That's because it's now it's like it comes from the inside out, where before it was like I was being told all these messages and it was really confusing because I could not stick to it. And because I had this disordered eating background. So yeah, I feel like one of the things I traveled to Japan this year for a month, as you know, and that was a big milestone for me. And just getting to eat freely. I had more desserts there than I would have at home, but it was so fun to be like, wow, I get to try these new different foods. And I was like, if this were me 2 years ago, I don't think I could have done it, or I could have done it and been pretty miserable because, yeah, I'd be resentful that I couldn't eat all these different foods.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And I think, when you're going through these symptoms and you're so bloated and there's pain and you're not eliminating properly, it's so hard to believe that dealing with your emotions could actually resolve the symptoms.
Yeah.
Right?
I get it. I so empathize with people who are on that journey. And if it's not working and you've been doing it for a while, it could be time to try another way. It's just like what I got so tired of it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can't believe I have I don't even think about my digestion. Like it's just working now. And I'm eating all of these foods that I once associated with like, that's going to cause bloating. That's going to make my stomach upset. I'm going to be curled over. Like it was sometimes so painful.
That's so incredible, Kailey. And I'm so happy that you're sharing this because I think it really shows the power of knowledge of our mind when our mind, even if it's subconsciously, believes something's dangerous for us, our body will literally create symptoms to warn us not to eat that thing. But that's actually coming from our beliefs. So it's like this whole feedback loop. And then the piece you talked about is so important, like really dealing with what emotions are you trying to avoid and numb out from with food or media or all the other ways we numb out.
Yeah. And I had to bring in so much self compassion when I would overeat or when I would numb out, and just to realize, like, okay, because what would happen is I would in the past beat myself up and be like, okay, we got to bear down with more control. But instead, I mean, that was another point where I would just write love letters of like, it's okay. And then eventually, through a loving approach, it resolved. And that's not something that I deal with anymore.
So amazing. It's funny. I was at a restaurant the other day and he said, do you want the sourdough bread with the meal? And honestly, I could have gone either way. Like I was really excited for the meal. I was like, sure, just because I can eat it, and like I kind of did feel like some bread and butter. And it's just so nice to eat what we want and say yes to what we want. And yeah, tune into that, what I call intuition and nutrition, was just like really feeling what our body wants. And so I want to get into kind of some of the doing what we love and peace and play. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about pelvic pain, because I think it's also part of shifting this pattern more into pleasure. And I know you dealt with all different kinds of chronic pain that you've dealt with that have moved around, but pelvic pain being one area that it had taken up residence. And so how was approaching pelvic pain different and the same for you as recovering from the other symptoms?
Yeah, I would say one of the core things a lot of it is the same, but one of the core things is safety. So for me, the pelvic pain was brought on from some trauma. It was also brought on from living and being in a relationship where I was really out of alignment and ignoring my intuition. And this was before I knew about mind body medicine. This was years and years and years ago. And it was something that was really hard to talk about because there's just can be a lot of shame. And so instead, I just decided to shut down being intimate, shut down being in a relationship. So the same thing as kind of with the food, where it's like restriction. Let's just restrict.
Mm.
Let's live a really small life. And yeah, it was painful. And even when I was doing the be your own medicine work, like I wasn't so much focused on it because I think, yeah, there can be, for me, there was a lot there. So I needed space to just kind of work with the practices that help to cultivate safety. Also, expressing my anger. There was some anger that I really had to work with. And I did some work therapeutically and in some other healing containers, more like one to one or in group settings, like women's kind of things that were really helpful with that as well to supplement the mind body work that I was doing. And then the last piece was, I mean, there was healing that I had done within myself, but then getting into a loving relationship with a safe partner has been like the final piece of the puzzle for me because there was a certain level of intimacy and safety that I needed to have with another. And I don't think that's necessary for everyone, but for me, it was helpful to because the wound had started with a relationship, a prior relationship. It kind of helped complete the circle of like, okay, now I can be safe and I can be my full self in a loving relationship with another person. And so I would say that's what is a little bit different, I would say, about my journey with pelvic pain. But it's definitely something that like I have so much love for myself. I mean, I was just terrified of being intimate with anyone. It was so painful. It was so painful. And I
Yeah.
had to just move through so many different emotions that I think were really stored in
Yeah.
my pelvic bowl.
It's incredible how much you've been committed to moving through that. And first, it makes perfect sense that you would just need to contract and say, no, I'm just not going to do that. Because when we don't have other strategies or safe people, that's a real valid coping mechanism. And then I'm hearing you really created enough safety and somatic connection with yourself that you were ready to enter into a romantic partnership. And I think that's often a completion of healing is being with others in the world, whether it's in a partnership or other types of social engagement. And that can be scary, but then you get to a point where it's like, okay, I have enough practices and enough sense of safety and inner wisdom that I can do this. And it's just amazing to see how many ways you've spread out in a relationship, in traveling, dancing, working. You really support Be Your Own Medicine, and I know your own clients as well. So let's talk a little bit about spreading your wings and kind of finding pleasure, because when you are in a body that's really uncomfortable and even painful, the last thing we can imagine is finding pleasure of any kind. So, how did you start shifting into peace, play, enjoyment? We have, a channel in the course called Pathways to Peace, where sometimes that's like a stepping stone to joy. But what has that whole evolution been like for you, where you really are shifting from, I'm just wanting to get rid of the symptoms, into, I'm going to live my life again. And not only that, I'm actually going to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you shared about that peace can be a stepping stone into the joy and the pleasure. Because, yeah, when I was in the Be Your Own Medicine course, to say I should feel pleasurable or something, which is not at all what we're saying, but that would feel like such a far stretch. So I love how in the course, it's like, okay, little glimmers, noticing those glimmers throughout your day and marinating in them a bit, savoring them. So I remember when I was in the course, I would go to this bench that's right in my neighborhood and I would sit and I would watch the sun. And it was usually in the morning time. And I was exhausted, but I was able to connect with just a moment, a couple moments of peace. And I do some writing. There's also a creek spot that Rebecca mentioned earlier here in Boulder that I was able to start going to. And that was water is so healing for me. So getting into water or being in nature for just a little bit, whatever felt within my reach. And then over time, that naturally started expanding as I was doing this work of like, oh, I remember the first trip I took after the course was with my mom and sister, and we drove down to New Mexico to see my aunt. And New Mexico has such a gorgeous landscape. And I was still very much suffering with like the fatigue and insomnia and things, but I felt so much joy around the fact that I did this, that I was here and I was able to make this first step of like, okay, I can travel outside my home. And now like it's extended to I can travel to other countries and enjoy my life. And I remember at the time too, we had a coaching session and I said to you, I'm reclaiming my big, beautiful life. And that became a mantra for me of just reciting that and expanding into, I feel like when you deal with, or when I dealt with all these symptoms, it's like all I saw was pain. Everything, like I was seeing the world through fear and struggle. But to start to open my eyes to see, like, okay, there's more here. And I can breathe into just the breeze or the bird song and taking that in.
Well, I really love that you covered this whole spectrum of ways that you can enjoy life, starting with the bird song, the breeze, the sunrise, because often that's all we have access to when we're homebound or bedbound. And I know a lot of people will say in the course, how can I find joy if I can't really leave my house? And I think we both have experienced that you can actually tap into peace and something that maybe is a little more expansive no matter where you are. And that's where it starts. But really, even when you're doing the big things like traveling across the country to Japan, it's still moment by moment. And if we're just rushing through life and we're not savoring each moment and each taste and each sound and each experience, we're not going to enjoy that either. So it's like learning to come into the present moment in our senses, no matter how much we can do.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like this work really opened me up to the full spectrum of it expanded my capacity to be with discomfort, to be with the fear and not just be swallowed by it or the sensations. And then it also expanded the other side of the spectrum, which is, oh my gosh, I can savor this baked good or this cup of tea or the sunlight. And so it's both. It's the full, all the shades of the human experience.
It's so funny because I have this little quote here that my yoga teacher wrote down for me that I want to add to Be Your Own Medicine by Khalil Gibran that says, the deeper sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain.
Yeah, that's it.
That's just what you're talking about. It's like you learn to be with the discomfort of the sorrow, the shame, the anger, and there's more space for joy, for peace, for optimism.
Yeah.
And I really see that and experience that in you, Kailey. It's so beautiful. I mean, you just have this infectious laugh and smile, but also when you're sad, you cry. You know, you do cry out too. Oh,
I'm just being in biomedicine, I will feel it so deep. Like, I think that was been a big part too, is like, I'm a big feeler. I feel the full spectrum of this human experience. And I don't want to tamper that down. Like, I want to celebrate that sensitivity of like that creative flow. And I feel like I've just been given permission by myself to be like, I can do this.
Yes. And it's actually part of the healing process, which is so incredible with mind body symptoms, is to really be yourself, right? Embrace your authentic nature. So we've actually talked about a lot of the really amazing things you're doing now, but I'd love to ask where people can find you and what you're doing in your work life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can find me on my website, moonbodyliving.com. And that's where I do my one-on-one mind body coaching work. I also do some embodiment coaching as well. And then you can also see me assisting Rebecca. I'm on all the live calls if you join the cohort. I'm also helping in the back end with things like email and stuff like that. So that's also where you can find me. And then just the third thing is, yeah, I'm returning. I had stopped school. I was getting my master's in therapy, stopped school a couple years ago due to all of this. And so I'll be resuming that as well and completing my degree. And that feels like another milestone. Okay, I'm ready. I can embark upon this journey as well.
You are truly living your big, beautiful life. It's an honor to witness and know you. Do you have anything in closing you want to share, Kailey, that we didn't cover with people who are really struggling with these chronic symptoms and want to get well again?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that first, I deeply see you and I understand. I mean, these symptoms brought me to my knees. And so I know how all-encompassing the struggle can feel. And I have this line of poetry that was like a guiding light for me through, and still has been a guiding light for me through this journey, that says, there is gold in the ache. And to me, remembering, like, what I would offer is just remembering that there is something, even in the midst of this ache, that is glistening, that's waiting for you, that's waiting to bloom within you ultimately. It's already there. It's just that there's been these patterns and cycles that have gotten grooved, but there's a way through that. And I'm so, so grateful that you and the course have been such a vital part of my process and my unfolding and my journey.
Well, it's truly my honor. Such beautiful words. There is gold in the ache. Thank you so much, Kailey.
Thank you, Rebecca.
And so, as you can hear, it really is possible to recover from such a wide range of mind body symptoms and really find that part of you that is waiting to bloom, as Kailey said. We walk people through all the knowledge and the practices in the Be Your Own Medicine course. This is how Kailey recovered. And of course, as she said, she's now on the team. You can find out more at RebeccaTolin.com/course. You can also sign up for a free meditation on the website. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment. I love reading those, and subscribe to this channel so we can really help spread the word. I want you to remember that you can be your own medicine. I am here for you. I'm rooting for you. Take good care, everyone.